Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle one of the absolute fundamentals of modern JavaScript, how you declare your variables. I promise, if you get this right, you're going to be writing much cleaner and way safer code.
So, have you ever been there, staring at your screen wondering, should this be a let, a const, or maybe even a var? Well, if you have, trust me, you are not alone. It's a super common point of confusion for developers, but the answer is actually way simpler than you think.
And that's the good news. There is a really simple system that gets this right every single time. By the end of this, you're going to have a crystal clear rulebook that'll make your code more predictable and help you squash bugs before they even get a chance to happen. Okay, but before we start comparing let, const, and var, let's just rewind for a second. Why do we even need variables at all? I think the best way to get this is with a little analogy I like to call the memory box.
See, whenever you declare a variable, you're basically telling JavaScript, hey, I need a box to store something. Could you label this box username for me? And I'm going to pop some data inside. That's all it is, just a named container for your info.
And these memory boxes, they are absolutely crucial. We use them for everything, storing a user's name so we can say hi later, reusing a number in a bunch of calculations, or grabbing the data that comes back from a server.
All right, let's hop in the time machine and head back to the early days of JavaScript. For a long, long time, we only had one way to make these boxes, the var keyword. And, well, let's just say it came with some interesting side effects.
So, the big problems with var boil down to three things. Its scope, the fact that you can accidentally just redeclare it whenever you want, and this kind of weird behavior called hoisting. We're going to focus on the biggest troublemaker of the bunch first, and that is its scope. Check this out. You'd think that the variable x, which we created inside these curly braces, would stay inside those curly braces, right? But nope, with var, it just leaks right out and you can still access it afterwards. This is a classic recipe for bugs, where variables can just stomp all over each other by accident.
So, to fix these exact issues, a big update to JavaScript back in 2015 gave us two new keywords. The first one we're going to look at is let, and it was designed from the ground up to be a much safer replacement for var. Let gives us something called block scope, and all that means is the variable is basically trapped inside the nearest pair of curly braces, whether that's an if statement or a for loop. It also, thankfully, stops you from accidentally declaring the same variable twice, which is a huge win, but you can still update or reassign its value later on if you need to. And here it is, solving our leaky scope problem. It's the exact same setup as before, but this time we're using let. Now, when we try to access y outside of its block, bam, JavaScript throws an error, just like it should. The variable is safely locked away, and our code is instantly way more predictable. But it didn't stop there. The language designers also gave us const, which adds another layer of safety and honestly has become the new gold standard for modern JavaScript. So const also has block scope, just like let, but it's even stricter. And here's the absolute key difference. You cannot reassign a new value to a const variable. Once you set it, it's set. It's like writing it in permanent marker. Oh, and you also have to give it a value right away. No creating an empty const box. Now, okay, listen up, because this is the single most important thing to get about const. It doesn't make the value inside the box unchangeable. It just makes the box itself unchangeable. What that means is, if your const holds an object or an array, you can still change the stuff inside that object or array. You just can't swap it out for a totally new object or a completely new array. Okay, we've met our three contenders. So how about we put them all side by side for the final showdown? This should make everything crystal clear. This table right here is your ultimate cheat sheet. Scope, let and const use the much safer block scope. Redeclaring, not on let or const watch, which saves you from so many headaches. And the big one, reassignment, let says yes, but const says no. That is its superpower. And that TDZ thing, it just stands for temporal dead zone. It's a fancy term for a safety net that stops you from using let or const variables before they're officially declared. All right, that's enough theory. How do we actually use this stuff in our real-world coding? Well, I've got a super simple guide for you that you can start using today. If you were to look at a modern JavaScript project, it would probably look a lot like this chart. The huge majority of your variables, like 80% of them, should be const. You'll sprinkle in some lets when you really need them, and var? Well, var is basically retired. So from now on, make const your default, your starting point. It is perfect for any value that you know shouldn't change, like a URL for an API or some app settings. And definitely use it for objects and arrays. It's the best way to make sure you don't accidentally replace your whole data set.
So when do you use let? You only reach for let when you know for a fact that a variable's value is going to have to change later. The classic examples are things like loop counters that need to go up, or maybe a variable that's holding whatever the user is typing into a form.
And var? The rule here is incredibly simple. Just don't. Don't use it in new code. The only reason you'd ever touch it is if you're stuck working on a really old project from before 2015. For everything else, just pretend it doesn't even exist. In fact, we can boil this entire explainer down to one simple 3-step rule that will never, ever steer you wrong. Here it is. Step 1. Always start by declaring your variables with const. Step 2. If and only if you discover that you need to reassign that value, then you can go back and change it to let. And step 3, never use var. That's it. Follow that simple rule and your code will be safer, cleaner, and a whole lot easier to debug.
So there you have it. We've gone from confusion to total clarity with a simple framework you can use every single time you create a variable. This is more than just a coding trick. It's about making your intentions clear. So the only question left is, now that your code is safer and stronger, what are you going to build with it?